Hi friends, welcome back to another video in my Pottery at Home series. This is a series that I've created to answer some of your most frequently asked questions and to give you all the information that you need to know to get started making pottery at home. So you can see we are not in the studio today because today's video is all about making pottery anywhere. So I'm talking on your dining room table, in the corner of your bedroom, on your floor. I've done all of those things, and I'm here to tell you that it's absolutely possible and you can make some really amazing work that way. How great's that wallpaper? So before I get into the tips, I'm going to kind of give you the context for my pottery journey and all the different locations that I've worked in the past. I haven't always been so lucky to have so much space that I do now. Before moving here, I've pretty much always lived in apartments in the city, so small spaces, including when I was living in Berlin. I was living in a studio apartment with my partner and my dog. So it was pretty cramped, and not only during the quarantine, but also when I first moved to Berlin, I was making pottery out of that studio on a little table that was about 3 meters from my bed. So the techniques and the sort of setup situation that I'm going to be talking about today are completely informed by those actual times that I was working in my own studio at home. I definitely recommend this sort of mobile studio setup for people who are just starting. So if you are just watching my YouTube videos and are curious about clay, or you just bought your first bag of clay and you're not really sure how to start, where to start, if you're not really ready to invest in your own space or even your own membership at a community studio and you just want to do some bare minimum work at home, these tips are exactly for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to divide my tips up into 3 items: work surface, flooring, and safety, I guess, and tools and tool systems, how you want to organize your tools. So first, let's talk about work surface. So this item right here is what I like to call a wedging board. It is basically canvas that's been wrapped around wood. That's it. I do have a video about how to make these, but if you've ever made a canvas for hanging up a painting on a wall, it's the exact same premise. Just wrap the canvas around the wood, use a staple gun. So I don't know if I'm the original inventor of the wedging board, but what I do know is I've never seen anyone use them before, and now I know a lot of people who use them. So I'm just gonna take the credit for that. But the whole reason I made a wedging board is because where I learned pottery, it was in a community studio and all of the tables were wrapped in canvas. There's some debate about whether or not this is a safety hazard, but put that aside, I really liked to work on canvas. But in my very first studio, I didn't have an extra table that could be my pottery table. I was actually working on my partner's desk while he was not home because I didn't even have a desk at the time. So I came up with this idea to have a work surface that was like the work surface I was used to, a canvas covered table, but was movable, right? So making one of these is a great investment, even if you think, in 6 months or something, I'm going to have my own studio space. You're going to want to take this with you. So definitely get yourself a wedging board. If for whatever reason you don't want to get a wedging board or you don't have access to canvas, by the way, you can use pretty much any fabric to cover this. I do recommend a stronger weave canvas though. But if for whatever reason you can't get access to these materials, you can also work on straight wood. Ideally, you're going to be working on a material that is porous. And that's because, especially if you're doing something like slab building, the clay doesn't stick to a porous surface. So my table here is I don't know, I think it's veneer and it's smooth. It's been treated, however, I don't know, I didn't make this table, but it's not porous, which makes it really great to clean because you can just wipe it down. It's not going to soak up any water. But if I rolled up clay directly on this table, you would never be able to pull the clay up because it would suction itself to the table. So that's why it's very important to have a porous surface that you're working on. And I recommend canvas because it's just the best, in my opinion. So welcome to my floor. The lighting is kind of getting crazy. Right behind the camera, it's kind of streaming in and there's these big sunbeams on the floor. So not ideal for filming. We're just gonna work with it though. Yeah, excuse the lighting. So we're down here to talk about flooring because ideally for a studio space that you're working in, you are not going to have carpet. And this is because dust. So the main thing that I want you to think about when you're setting up your studio space is how is the space going to be a healthy space to practice clay. The biggest safety issue that is in our lives as ceramicists is the exposure to silica dust. So silica dust is in our clay, it's in our glazes, it's anything that you get dirty in the clay world is going to create silica dust. And the thing about carpets is that it just like soaks it up and stores it up, and then each time you step on your carpet, it's gonna like shoot up a little poof of air. So if I was actually going to be working in this room, I would definitely remove this rug. So ideally, if you have carpeting in your rooms, maybe you can find an alternative. Like I would recommend rather working in the kitchen than in the bedroom if it has carpeting, something like that, so that you can mitigate the exposure to clay dust. Because basically what we want to do to stay healthy is to be able to clean our space where the silica dust has occurred. So the generation of silica dust is absolutely unavoidable because that's literally the clay, and clay is dirty, it's muddy. So you want to be able to use a sponge or a mop to clean that up. If you want to learn more about safety, you should watch my video all about studio safety. But the bare gist of it is you want to clean wet, so with a sponge or a mop, not dry. So you don't want to be sweeping, you don't want to be vacuuming, because all that does is that throws the silica dust up into the air. So find yourself a workspace that you're able to mop, that you're able to clean wet. Tile is obviously ideal. I have laminate in my studio, vinyl is fine, even wood is fine, I think, as long as you're not having like big texture in your wood. Anything that you can probably clean. If you have access to none of those things, maybe you have an outdoor space that you could work, a patio, or worst case scenario is you can put down like a tarp or something so that you have your workspace in your room and you're sitting on the floor, you're sitting on your tarp, and then once you're done with that, you take that outside, you hose it down, something like that to contain the dust and not get it into your carpet. This is especially important if you are going to be working in your bedroom. I know a lot of people do that, especially a lot of younger people, college kids who just like don't have the space. Just be really careful in this situation. Like know that you're going to be sleeping in that room, you're going to be in that room for at least 8 hours a day, breathing that air, and you want to make sure that the silica dust is not in that air. I might get some people mad at me for even recommending that you can do pottery in your bedroom. I'm going to leave it up to you guys to just be safe and responsible with your own health. Obviously, having a studio outdoors, separate from your house, is the ultimate goal, but the reality is not everyone can achieve that. Like, so many people can't. And I think it's really privileged of people to say you cannot practice pottery if you do not have that. So the whole goal of what I'm trying to do here is make pottery accessible to everyone. And the pure fact is that I want you guys who don't have an extra space to be able to practice pottery as well. So that's my rant about that. Let's move on to storing your tools. Okay. Here's our tool situation. So first up, I want to say you gotta get yourself a box. So we're talking a mobile studio setup. So that means that all you want to have is your wedging board and a box full of your tools. Okay, so this is actually what I did in the quarantine. I had no space. Like I mentioned, I lived in a studio apartment in Berlin. I had no space, so I limited myself to this box. And I mean, I packed it a little bit nicer, but this is like actually what I use, including my clay. My clay was also required to fit in this box. These are the rules I set for myself, and you can definitely do that too if you are working in a similarly small space. So basically, this is my recommendations for the most minimal basic tools that you need. Because when we're having a mobile or tiny studio space, we really need to reduce it to the basics. And with these tools, you can do pretty much anything except working on the wheel. You can do all sorts of slab building, you can do pinch pots, you can do coil pots. So this is what I like to use. Okay, first you want to get yourself a sponge. I like to use these little sponges for pretty much anything except for cleaning. I do have a bigger sponge that I use for cleaning, but what this is a big sponge that's cut into 4 pieces. So you get 4 times the use out of it. So that's what I do here. And then a little bowl or something. What to say about it. This is just for water. You can use it to mix up slip as well. I would say those things you actually need. And then you also actually need a towel. The rest is just nice to have. Okay, what I would recommend is a trimming tool or a carving tool. These are just fun if you want to do any trimming or any carving. I don't know if you want to do that or not. That's what I recommend. If you're going to be doing slab making, I recommend a rolling pin and 2 thickness gauges. At least 2. I mean, it would be nice to have a variety of thicknesses, but if you go with a 1/2 centimeter thickness gauge, that's pretty much good for most things. For things like mugs, vases, and stuff, like I would just choose 1/2 centimeter. Yeah, that's kind of like my go-to thickness. And then just a simple, you know, rolling pin. A knife. This is maybe required, but you can get these at the dollar shop. That's where this one's from. Doesn't need to be special, doesn't need to be even that sharp because you're just cutting clay. Needle tool, definitely handy to have a needle tool for the same things that you use it for a knife. You know, you want to make precision cuts and stuff with that. I recommend a scoring tool. I like this one a lot. I get it from my local ceramic supplier here in Germany. But you can also use a serrated rib or even like a fork or something if you don't have this. This is just for attaching 2 pieces together when we are going to be slipping and scoring. Likewise for slip, handy to have a brush. I really like this brush because it's quite stiff and therefore it's also good for smoothing things out. So we can get into little crevices and smooth them out. Ribs. Ribs are nice for smoothing things, especially if you're doing that slab building, as I mentioned. This is a pottery rib, and then I also have a rib that is actually, I think, for making dough. I don't know anything about, actually I think it's for cutting dough, but you can also use it to clean your work table and to smooth out your slabs. Oh, and then especially if you're doing slab building, again, I would recommend getting a ruler, just a simple ruler. So you can make rectangles, you know, measure it out. And the last thing I would recommend is a wear board. Actually, I think you definitely need a wear board. The wear board can be made out of any material. I like to use random offcuts of wood that I get from my local hardware store, just because they're cheap, and then I cut them down and use them. And then I'll usually put newspaper on top before I put my pot down. That makes it easier to move the piece. Then you can flip it and you can move the pot off of your workspace when you are not working on it. And then the table can go back to your dining room table or whatever. Other things that will be fun, but you definitely don't need, is a turntable. I really like having a turntable around. In fact, I have 2. I'm trying to get a 3rd one that's bigger because all I have are these little ones, but this has lasted my entire pottery career, these little ones. I get asked a lot where I get these little ones. They're from a local art store called Bösne. I don't know if they exist in your country. Yeah, they're just really nice. But any turntable will do. And if you don't have a turntable, you can use a stack of books and just turn the top book. That works as well. I also recommend a hole cutter. These are handy because it's really hard to cut a circle otherwise, just with your needle tools. So I use these really often when I'm making things like planters, or I'm making tea sieves often as well. I'll use a hole cutter, but if you don't have this, you can also use a drill bit and just turn it with your hands. Okay, the last thing I'm going to recommend are cookie cutters. So yeah, cookie cutters are fun to work with. I have a huge variety of stencils, even things like those traceable circle thingies that people who draw use. I guess what you can do, which I definitely recommend, is to go into your kitchen and steal a bunch of supplies. So, you know, you probably have cookie cutters, or maybe you have cookie cutters. I don't know if you bake. Knife. You know, a lot of these things that you can just steal from your kitchen. Yeah, and that's what's in my box. So if you arrange this in a clever way, you can definitely fit all of the things in it. Ta-da! Goes on your shelf. And then, pro tip, your wedging board can slide behind your wardrobe or your dresser or something. So, there you go. So that's pretty much all my recommendations for setting up your home studio. It's really not that complicated. And all you need now is to get some clay. So pretty much all of these tools will be available at your local ceramic supplier, with the exception of the wedging board, because I invented that and you're gonna have to make it yourself. So we have our home studio set up, cool. But what do we do when we want to fire our pottery? Well, coincidentally, this video is part of a series and I explain all of this in my last video. So my last video was about how to rent a kiln, including why you should rent a kiln and also how you can go about doing that. So definitely go check that out after this video. So as a little bonus for all of you guys who've watched the video to the end, I'm going to answer a question that I know I'm going to get, but has nothing to do with my recommendations, which is, where the heck am I? What is this weird room? So those of you who've been watching me for a while know that I've recently moved out of Berlin, out of the big city, to the countryside in the middle of nowhere in Bavaria. This was a major life decision, life change that has been incredibly beneficial to my mental health and life, quality of life in general. I love Berlin, but yeah, I really like it out here. And because we're living in the middle of nowhere, we actually have a lot of space. So we're basically renting the first floor of like a 2-story house. So we have neighbors above us, but we also have a beautiful backyard. And it came at quite a reasonable price. So the only downside is that we have to renovate the heck out of it. Yes, we are renting and we're still renovating. It's nothing major. The landlord's already put in the floors for us, but we need to deal with this amazing wallpaper situation. I'm of the belief that this wallpaper should stay. I freaking love it, but it is coming off. It's coming off. And there's a corner over there that's like completely ripped up. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do in that situation. Oh, I didn't mention, this is my office. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to have an office. I mean, it's just like amazing circumstances. I mean, this is why it's so great to move out of the city, is because you have loads of space. And, you know, we decided to rent this house because of the garden and the yard and the price. And it just happened to have a bunch of extra rooms, which was very nice. So now I finally have an office and this is where I do my YouTube videos. But yeah, as you can see, the wallpaper needs to have some love. And we haven't done anything to this room basically yet. We've just been working in here because other rooms have been a priority. The kitchen is in progress still, but it's coming to an end. But we are both working full-time, so things are happening quite slowly. If you're interested in this side of my life, you can follow all these updates. I'm posting them pretty regularly over on Instagram anytime I do something new. So if you're interested in that side of my life, you can check it out there. This YouTube channel I'm going to keep to pottery though. So that's it for me today. I hope that these tips were helpful for you. I hope that this little life update was interesting to you. Let me know down below if you have any questions or if you want to see any particular videos from me. I get the vast majority of my video ideas from your comments down below. So I'm definitely having open ears to your feedback. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye friends.